Well, here we are. I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next. It's the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I am joined by Justin Pearson, who you may know through a number of different avenues. You may know him as the label owner of 31G. You may know him from any one of his current musical projects where he's the vocalist for Def Club, for Planet B, for Satanic Planet. You may also know him for the books that he's written. He's currently working on his fourth. He is a publicist. He's previously been a bass player. He's played in too many bands to mention, including the Locust and Dead Cross. He's been making music since he was a teenager. He has lived the punk rock lifestyle for decades, and he's a character. And it's cool for me not just to be able to talk to someone as interesting and experienced and kind of full of insight when it comes to underground independent music as Justin is, or JP, as a lot of people call him. But he's actually kind of inexorably linked to the origins of this podcast. In fact, the third episode with Pejmon of Satyasena came about through Justin in his role as publicist. So we were kind of talking about the possibility of having him on the podcast for a while. And I'm very happy that we finally did it. And in fact, tying in very nicely, there is a documentary on 31G and Justin, which is called Don't Fall in Love with Yourself, which had a limited release online before, but it's going to be getting an official release. You can pre-order it currently on VHS and Blu-ray. I will put all links in the description. You can also watch a trailer on YouTube at the moment. And one other thing I should mention as well, Justin also hosts a podcast called Cult and Culture. So yeah, I will put all the various relevant links in the description. With someone like Justin going into this interview thinking about what I wanted to talk to him about, it's like there's way too many things to cover. But what we ended up getting into is kind of going really right back to his origins, into his childhood, some of the difficulties that he grew up with, having to relocate, some family tragedy that happened in his younger years, in his formative years, getting into his first experiences making music, really those kind of formative experiences of getting into underground music and underground music scenes. And then talking about the label, which is particularly interesting for me. You know, I don't want to just talk to people that make music, but I want to talk to the people who are kind of putting music out there on an independent level as well. And there was loads of great insight. Yeah, there isn't really anything else for me to say. I'll let Justin speak for himself. You can follow me on all social media at Tom Osman Sounds. And you can check out what I'm doing musically at tomosmansounds.com. Wherever you are listening to or watching this podcast, please like, subscribe, thumbs up, post a comment, all such things. I'm just recently back from Thailand. I'm still jet lagged. I've been getting my shins kicked to pieces day in, day out. Absolutely loved it. Not just randomly, I was doing Thai boxing, but there you go. I'm probably forgetting to say something. I guess I'm going to play some music. I guess I'll explain the description what it was. I guess you're going to hear it, a clip of it in a few seconds, and then you'll get the full track at the end. And I believe that there is nothing else for me to say now, but Justin Pearson, take it away. You are a man of many hats, of many irons in the fire. You're a label owner, bass player, vocalist, author, previous Jerry Springer guest. I'm sure there's plenty of other things too. So what are the main things that you're working on right now?
Currently, musically speaking, I only am a vocalist. So like my active bands are Def Club, Planet B, and Satanic Planet. and I still run 31G. We're about to release an album by a band called Help from Portland. Um, and I have a podcast called Cult and Culture, and I'm working on a new book, so I guess I'm still an author. Yeah. If there was access to more pranks on TV shows, I would definitely do those. So
And this
yeah,
is going to be book number 4, is that right?
that is correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So what's this book going to be?
Um, it's weird. I worked at this gay club for 8 years, so it's about that. And it's been very hard for me to navigate how to write it because I'm not gay, and um like considering the time of when it is from, things were a lot different. Like for instance, the language was a lot different. So
Mm,
so like now there are people that are like obviously there's like a positive change, but people are very sensitive to certain words and stuff. So it's hard to like find the right nuance, especially being someone who's not gay. So it's yeah, it's weird. And I have to just kind of like keep rechecking and making sure that I'm not stepping out of out of boundaries or whatever. So yeah, it's been an interesting book. I think it'll be very, I'm hoping it'll be funny. I feel like my writing is getting more humorous. So we'll see how it goes.
and so what is this going to be done as autobiography? Is it going to be partially fiction? Is
Yeah, it's
what's
just
going on?
like just stupid shit that I did for 8 years. I mean, so it's about like this job that I had and kind of like lays out like why I got the job and how I got the job. And then it veers off to like the different things that I did in that 8 year span. So like it kind of inserts itself into, well, it's weird. One of a writer that I work with a lot and really think is a fantastic modern writer is Adam Gennady, and his some of his books and characters kind of intertwine. So it's like that. I mean, you could take From the Graveyard of the Arousal Industry, and you could place this book like right in sort of the tail end of it. And then also How to Lose Friends and Irritate People can fit right into the book I'm writing now, like
Hmm.
as like a chapter in amongst it. So I don't know. I kind of look at it like all the stupid Star Wars shit they keep releasing, how it's like not in a chronological order. You could like kind of
Yeah.
go back and forth. Not that my life's like Star Wars, but it has a lot to do with like it talks about like this band All Leather, and it talks about me touring with the Bloody Beetroots and I don't know, just a lot of weird stuff. Yeah, it goes all over the place. It's not really like all about the gay world. Because at one point I talk about like how Retox, this band I had, Retox, played opening for PIL, and everybody, well, a lot of people from the club that I worked at came to see the show, and there's a lot to it. It was funny. There's a lot to it. So it talks about like music stuff too,
Yeah.
and not just like electronic, dance music or whatever at a gay bar. So um, yeah, I don't know. A lot of stories about neo-Nazis, which is not expected, and a lot of parallels that I drew with Gigi Allen, which is also not expected. So yeah, it's all over the place.
Interesting. Well, this is so incidental, but seeing as you've brought up Gigi Allen and it kind of just triggered my memory, how do you feel about anal cunt?
I never really thought it was funny. I get that that's what their shtick was, but I feel like my wit level was a little bit higher than like a fart joke, and I feel like they were kind of at the fart joke level. I think it was a relevant band at the time. I don't know. Like even when it was happening, I kind of looked at it as like kind of junky, and I figured
Hmm.
I feel like they could have just done a little bit better. I'm trying to think of like a parallel to something like them, because I mean I wouldn't even throw them into the category of Gigi Allen. I think Gigi Allen was more performance art, where like Anal Cunt was just trying to like
Hmm.
be crude and like say mean shit to people to get a laugh or whatever, you know?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. They don't sort of neatly fit into the same category, but I suppose just from the point of view of extremely controversial figures, it just popped into my head there.
Yeah.
Um, Now I want to get back into going through a bit of your history, which is varied, and there's way too many things for us to cover. But just sticking with this topic of all the various different projects that you have, I'm kind of curious, how do you keep on top of all of this? I interviewed Dave Lombardo a while ago,
Mm.
who I know you have worked with and are working with kind of currently. And he's sort of famous for like being, ADHD and kind of having so many different things going on. Um, and so I was kind of curious from his point of view how he keeps on top of everything. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering for you, how do you keep everything in place and keep all the plates spinning?
Well, I love Dave so much. I think he's such a wonderful human being, and I think his creative output is so awesome and varied. And I can't, like, if I was to have to pick one modern musician right now that I think is like the most inspirational, it'd definitely be him. Absolutely love that guy. So, I think, unfortunately for me, I'm in a bunch of like entry level bands at this point, and so like I look at Dave and I'm like, I don't know how the fuck you go from like Bungle to, a film score to the Misfits to whatever. It's all like very high tiered, a lot more at stake. Where like
Yeah,
if I'm doing a bunch of shit and I fuck up, it's like, oh well, these 20 people at the show, fuck them. I did my best or whatever.
yeah.
But not that I would just do that. But I don't like from the outsider's perspective, it's a lot different, I think, because like I feel like I'm not doing everything at once. And
Mm,
maybe it's very similar to Dave too. I mean, his schedule is like it seems like it's like bookended, like but like butted up to each other, like each project. Where me, there's a little bit more like wiggle room and time to breathe and stuff. So like obviously a lot of people know like when you create something, it doesn't come out instantly. So the world thinks like, oh fuck, this came out and you're doing this at the same time. And it's like,
mm,
yeah, the record that came out was recorded 8 months ago,
yeah.
or whatever it is. And now I'm doing this other thing. So it looks busier, I think, to other people, especially like with the ability to constantly, or not the ability, the forcefulness that the internet makes you constantly share stuff and like post things. So it looks like a lot more is going on. Um, like right now, I mean, I'm about to start recording a Def Club album. Um, but I also like had been slowly working on a Satanic Planet album, which we're waiting on Dave Lombardo to contribute his parts to it. But like it's not happening at the same exact time. So like
Mm,
I've kind of done with the Satanic Planet thing. Now I'm focusing on Def Club. And the things that I guess that might interfere with that would be me editing my book or life. It's not like there's just like piles of shit, like of different things happening all at once.
yeah.
Again, like one of the things that I would say, like that's like kind of a drag, not like I'm not saying this like in a negative way, but like running a record label is a pain in the ass for me because like we don't make a lot of money, and I'm also a publicist for the label for myself, and so being a publicist and running a record label takes up a lot of time, and there's a lot of
Mm,
like today I have to sit down and I have to fucking do this thing, then that's going to take about an hour and I have to do it no matter what. Like no matter where I'm at in the world, I have to stop and do this thing. And that kind of sucks. But yeah, schedule wise it's not that crazy. When at least in my brain, maybe someone else is like, "Well, you should slow down," but we only have a limited amount of time here, so I
that is
don't I don't
true.
slow down. Yeah.
So going way back, you are originally from Arizona,
Mhm.
and I know that you left when you were sort of 11 or 12. Is that right? And I know that that time in your life was, I would say, I mean, it has to have been incredibly traumatic with the death of your dad.
Yeah, it's
Um,
pretty fucked. Yeah.
but just pausing on Phoenix, Arizona for a second, like what do you remember about there? Because these were some sort of formative years of your life. I guess you were already kind of getting into music. You
Mhm.
discovered punk. What do you kind of remember of that place?
Well, I like touring and stuff. I'll go back there often, sometimes twice a year or more, but like at least once a year I'll play there. Um, and there's like a sense of nostalgia that I'll get, but I also think I mean, I feel bad when I go there because inherently, like if I have a microphone, I'll just start talking shit to people, like not to people, but about like this, like I'm in Phoenix, this place fucking sucks. I don't know what you guys are doing here. You should leave, it's not like that nice of me to do, but I mean, it was fucking lame there. I still think it's pretty fucking lame. On a few levels, for one, like the heat is just unbearable. It gets up to like 125 degrees Fahrenheit sometimes in the summer, which is just like really, really hard to do anything. And so there's that. And then there's just like culturally, I think it's seeped in like weird dollar store consumerism, like just strip mall culture, like strip mall after strip mall. And then
Mm.
you have this like kind of, in the current political climate, you have this like Trumpy kind of vibe, and it just like these like fuckheads that live and die by Fox News, and it's just I feel like an elitist, like some dickhead, like California elitist or whatever. I mean, sure they think I am, but I look at Phoenix and I'm like, man, this is kind of a drag, and there's a lot of openly racism, a lot of institutional racism, and sure there's that
Mm.
here in California and San Diego too. But I don't know. I just look at it and it's a lot of like there's just a lot of negative energy that I feel when I go there. And it is what it is. But yeah, so I'm glad I moved when I was 12 and my mom made me move. I thought it was terrible and I was so upset about it. But I didn't really know like what was going to be on the other side of the move.
Yeah.
And it was the move was weird because my mom moved me out to San Diego with her new boyfriend after my dad died, who was abusive to both of us. And so that was like
Mm.
not that fun for me. And so I was like, I don't really want to go do this new thing with that guy. And so that happened. But after a little bit of time passed, things got cooler. And obviously, if I would have stayed in Phoenix, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be talking to you right now. So,
Yeah.
I feel like it's cool that the shift got me to link up with other people and change my trajectory in life.
Were you, before you made that move, were you already, going to shows? Were you already meeting people that were into to similar music as you? Like, how did you first get exposed to interesting music and art and anything else?
Yeah, I mean, so I try to think about where it actually started, like the first little sort of nugget, and I think it might have been the film Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I don't know if that happened before skateboarding happened, but like when I saw Ferris Bueller's Day Off, it had Sig Sig Sputnik on the soundtrack, and I was like really obsessed with that band, which I really feel like without realizing it, and maybe the rest of the Locust doesn't agree with me, but I feel like that band really was something for me at least. Like that's what if there was any direction that I could say like we gotta fucking do this or that, it had to have been from Six Six Sputnik and like the way that the band sounded and also looked. Those
Mm.
things were really cool for a 10-year-old kid to discover. And then there's skateboarding. So like the skateboarding thing was inevitable because I think it was taking over and it was still like this sort of outlaw sport, as under the radar kind of like weirdo shit. We're into it. And I remember like going and renting these VHS tapes of skate competitions and I would watch them to learn, obviously to learn the like how to skate better, but also little tiny like I guess they call it Easter eggs or whatever. I'd see like Lance Mountain skating a pool, and I'm like, what the hell is that sticker on his helmet? And it would be like a Sam Hain sticker. And then
Mm.
so I was inherently just thought that was cool looking. And then I mean, it's probably like the Misfits and stuff was like the first thing, but like a lot of like Pushead artwork and also Septic Death in
Yeah.
general. That and then of course the Thrasher skate rock comps. So like all those things really ushered me into punk rock. And I'd go shoplift all these cassettes. I would come back and I'd be hanging out with my friends and my dad would freak out and like be like, what the fuck is this stuff with like you know, I remember him like seeing the cassette of Misfits Legacy of Brutality and like freaking out that there was a song called Angel Fuck. And I was just like, who cares? Like, I don't know, whatever. Like, it's not a big deal. And then it was the Sex Pistols where I didn't know anything about them. There was no internet, like I knew
Mm,
very little. I just knew they sounded cool, they looked cool, and it, just seemed like edgy or whatever. And so I remember my dad like getting really pissed and saying I'm going to become a heroin addict and kill my girlfriend. And I had no idea what he was talking about. Didn't know what heroin was. I didn't know that Sid killed Nancy or whatever,
mm,
allegedly. I didn't know any of that shit. I was just like, man, fuck you, because at the time my dad was abusive to my mom, not to me, but just to my mom. And he was an alcoholic and he was just kind of a shithead. And I was like, well, it's weird that my dad doesn't like this stuff. My dad also didn't like me skateboarding. He
mm.
really wanted me to be into golf. He was very much into golf, and he also wanted me to be into girls. And I was like, I'm 10, dude. Like, it's just not on my radar, or whatever, And so I kind of used what he didn't like as a gauge to what I should be into. And so I was like,
Mm.
oh, he hates skateboarding. Like, fuck, I'm gonna be totally into this. Hates punk rock. Well, I'm gonna totally be into that too. And then it was right after he died, it was like, well, like right before he died, I just started like really getting into it, like looking weird, dressing weird. And then once he died, it kind of opened this floodgate. There was a lot of like I had a lot of interesting freedom in some respect, only having one parent. And so I was able to like do and seem like more of a punk, I guess
Yeah.
physically, but also just mentally, and that was it. Um, but the Arizona thing's weird too, because I feel like I was like hanging out with like just not bad kids, but like things were different. So this was like what, 80, 87, 86, 87, and like punk rock was a lot different then. And so like, going back to the Sid Vicious thing, like looking at a guy wearing a swastika t-shirt who's a heroin addict, obviously wouldn't fly right now, like
Yep.
I don't know, how well that would do. But at the time I thought like, oh, this is cool. And so like, I'd have like stupid shit with swastikas on it and stuff. I didn't really know any better. And it wasn't until I moved out to San Diego and had like more friends that were of color and were just like, yo, this is fucked up. And I was like, oh yeah, this is
Mm.
fucked up. And also moving to San Diego too was interesting because there was a big neo-Nazi issue because of our proximity to Fallbrook, which was where Tom Metzger and the White Iron Resistance was. So there was a lot of
Okay.
skinheads in the late 80s and early 90s. And so like me getting beat up by those skinheads all the time made me, essentially pick a side. I was like, oh, you're the enemy then, I guess. And also moving to San Diego, I remember like I never really knew like the cultural aspects of Phoenix are pretty dismal. So like I moved to San Diego and I started becoming friends with all these cholos, and that was really strange because it was a very different cultural um, background or community that I was used to, and it was really
Mm.
strange how welcome they were to me. And the reason why I realized the reason why all these cholos wanted to be my friend was because like the Nazi skinheads hated me because I was a punk and they thought I was a poser or whatever, and they would like beat me up all the time. So the cholos started helping me, and they gave me a nickname, and I started like hanging out with cholos, which is just a weird mix, but they actually helped me get through. This was in middle school, so they helped me get through middle school, and I'm forever grateful to the cholos and my life. So yeah,
And in terms of kind of like-minded people, like, when it came to exploring music and other things that you were interested in creatively, did you get that from that group of people or did you find that elsewhere?
yeah, I very much found it elsewhere. I mean, I was still into skateboarding, and so that was kind of the path that I was on. And um, I went to this school where people were bussed in. It was called a magnet program. So like all of the cholos didn't live where I lived. I lived in a predominantly middle, I guess lower class white neighborhood. And so all the like the Mexican kids that came in were just from a seemingly different world. Granted, it was only 20 minutes away from my house. My way of getting around was limited. But it was like hanging out with other skaters and stuff, and then like meeting just key people that I ended up playing in bands with, or also played in other bands in San Diego. So yeah, it was weird. It was also weird to have a bigger city and to have friends in further other parts of the city. And the way we would all meet up and become friends was predominantly through music, going to shows or seeing them at record stores. Because I was really into collecting records, like maybe around the age of 10 or 11, and had a lot of friends that worked at record stores and also would shop there. So that's kind of like the key, I think, the link between me and other people that weren't like from my same school or something.
Yeah. And am I right that Struggle was your first band?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
tell me the story of Struggle. How did that come about?
That was mainly, well, primarily like because I went to school with some people that were in the band, but I was friends with Jose Palafox, the drummer. We met at a PIL concert when I was 14, and he got me my first job at the swap meet, which is in San Diego, swap meet, Colby swap meet. So I started working there. We worked at this place that sold bootleg t-shirts and cassettes. And so we became friends. And at one point, I don't know what it was. Well, he ran away from home and he stayed at my house. And my mom was like she was trying to be a good parent. And so she was like understood Jose wanting to run away. So she's like, look, you can stay here, but I'm going to tell your mom and I'm going to make sure it's okay. And so Jose kind of lived at our house for a little while. And she was going out of town. So she decided that she was going to send me back to Phoenix for a couple weeks to stay with my grandma. And since Jose was living there, that meant he had to go as well. So Jose and I went back to Phoenix, and we, I think it was for like 2 weeks, but we were there and we found out that Suicidal Tendencies were playing, and got tickets and went and saw Suicidal Tendencies. And it was at that show, which I think ended up being my 15th birthday. That was the reason why my grandma was like, all right, you can go or whatever. But we went to the show, and it was really strange because Jose and I were already kind of getting into politics and stuff. We had been working loosely with the Revolutionary Communist Youth Brigade in San Diego. That's a whole other story as well. But we were very politically, we were starting to become very politically minded. And so when we went to this show, we saw all these Nazi skinheads, and it was really strange because they were like white power Nazi skinheads at this concert, um, at Suicidal Tendencies, which didn't really equate accurately. And so we
Mm.
kind of, all right, we should probably start a band, and it should be very political. And the day we got back to San Diego, we started jamming with some friends, and that was Dylan, who went to school with Jose and I. He's the singer, and then our guitar player Cliff Cunningham, who went to another school, but I knew through the people from Unbroken. I don't know if Unbroken existed yet, but all the kids that were ended up becoming Unbroken lived in the next like sort of community out or whatever. So yeah, we all became friends, started a band, started playing music, and oddly enough, just were able to figure out how to tour and get on a record label, before I was 16, which is just weird.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, Thanks to
I
Ken McClard for taking a risk, because we were like not, I don't know. If someone approached me now and they're 15 years old, I would be like, I don't know if not that I don't think a 15-year-old can't play good music, but I'd be skeptical of things. Things were a little bit different than back then. I think there was no internet, so like you couldn't gauge if a band was going to become successful, or if they were going to tour, or what people thought of
mm.
them or whatever. Now it's a little bit different. But yeah, I appreciated Kent taking the risk with us.
And how long did Struggle continue for?
until until college started. So when we graduated, and I think it was Dylan, the singer, that was moving away to go to college. So I was 17. I wasn't quite 18 yet. So it lasted about 2 years. And then Dylan moved, and so we started another band, Swing Kids, which was three people from Struggle. Eric Allen, who was the second guitar player, and Struggle, who was also in Unbroken, ended up starting Swing Kids with Jose and I. And then so we kind of just kept going from there. Um,
So from the various, um, you know, my thing on this podcast is talking to people who are in sort of underground music scenes, DIY musicians.
Mhm.
And I've been more and more talking to people about some of the practicalities
Yeah.
of having a band, when you are on that
Mhm.
DIY level. And one of the things that I've been discussing quite a lot with people is touring. And
Mm.
how, whether it's now in 2024 or back in the 90s or the 80s or whatever, you would actually go about booking shows or tours. And I'm getting the impression more than more that networking, or at least kind of like building up communities and networks, is like really crucial as far as kind of being able to go out and like go, okay, I know these people there, and like maybe I know a band that came to play with us, and now we can go and see them. And it's kind of like you have these sort of interconnected networks. So do you feel now that you were kind of already doing that from like the point when you were 12? Like as soon as you started to sort of meet people that were in
Mm.
bands, was that sort of the foundation for where you are now in terms of like, being able to make contact with different people and to get to different places and to connect? Is that all interconnected?
Fuck, I guess so. I mean, to me, I think pre and then like not post, but like pre playing music was one thing. And I don't know if like my social skills or my ability to connect with people factored into like how it was to tour. It was definitely the before music thing was probably like knowing people in different communities was just through like a local music scene, I suppose, where it
Mm.
wasn't really like gonna help me branch out and tour the world or the United States, whatever. For me, early on was like discovering, well, Maximum Rock and Roll was a great publication, obviously, but they also, I think, had part released this magazine called Book Your Own Fucking Life, which I remember struggle using. And that was an ability that was basically like you could look through this magazine and get contacts for cities and book shows. And
Oh,
so
wow.
that was very helpful for us, because also but also like we would go on tour and there was we didn't have I don't even know how we did it because I don't know how we put gas in our vehicle or how we afforded anything, but our standards were pretty low. So you just had to kind of show up and not just show up and play. I don't know how the fuck we did it, but it was really booking your own fucking life that was like the huge thing that like helped. And then also we had these things called dialers. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those. Do you know
Don't
what
think
you know what those
so.
are? So this was like I think in 90, I could be wrong. Everybody started discovering these things called dialers, and I don't necessarily know what they were originally for, but you could buy them at Radio Shack. And I think they were kind of they would save phone numbers in it and you put it up to a payphone and it would dial numbers. But you could change these crystals in them that made these tones. So basically you could go to a payphone and call a long distance number and it would tell you you'd have to put in $1.75 per minute or whatever it is, and you could put this like dialer to the part you speak in, and you would just push this button, and it was a tone of a quarter going into these payphones.
Oh, right. Okay. I feel like this is something I've seen in movies, but never actually understood
I've
was a
never
real
seen it in a
thing.
movie, but everybody had these dialers, and it was like $40, which was a lot at the time to get the dialer with the hacked tone, the crystal tone or whatever. But you would instantly save money, and also it helped on tour. Like if you were, again, there's no cell phones, or whatever internet. There's nothing. So if you show up and you're in, I don't know, Eugene, Oregon, and you're like, I can't find the venue, you can just go to the payphone and you can call these people for free instead of like, oh fuck, we need a bunch of money to keep calling everyone. So that was really between the dialers and Run for Your Fucking Life, it really helped a lot of things. And the dialers also helped get me over to Europe when I was 20 because we were booking tours and talking to people in Europe, which was very expensive to call there at the time.
Hmm.
Uh, you couldn't use it once you were in Europe, but you could get everything kind of booked and set up for the most part before you even left the United States. So that was it was very helpful. Yeah.
What do you think? now in 2024, if there's, for a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old that's starting a band that, wants to go and play shows, wants to go on tour. I mean, the whole record label subject's another thing in itself, but
Mhm.
I'm sure there's pros and cons with every technological change and in each era, but is it easier? Is it difficult now, do you think? Like how are things different for bands now, young bands, if they want to go and sort of make a name for themselves and play and yeah, make connections?
I don't know if it's difficult or hard. I think it's probably both. Which isn't it's not me trying to avoid the question, but I feel like when I was playing at 15, and there's a few things. One, I remember being in a band, being in struggle, and when we put out our first 7 inch, I remember getting a letter to our PO box from Germany, and I was blown away that someone in Germany got our record, let alone heard it, liked it, took the time to write us, and that was really profound for me. Now it's like you put your music online and people all over the world instantly hear it, and so you kind of lose that specialness. I don't know. It's still special, but you lose the ability, like the fact that like my record physically made it to Germany and the guy or girl, whoever got it was like, holy shit, I'm gonna write the band. This is great.
Yeah.
And then sent it. That's just a lot. There's a lot more effort put into it. Now it's like you can just type someone or tell them they suck or whatever the fuck it is, instantly. So there's that. But when I would start, like I remember like there's a lot of things. Like I remember physically seeing a flyer for a show that Struggle played. I don't know if it was our first show, but it was like one of the first 10 shows. I remember like seeing it at a record store and I was just so psyched that my flyer was up there next to, you know, whatever, like a GBH flyer or Bad Religion or whatever the fuck was going on at the time. I was just like, damn, this is crazy. So now it's like you just kind of scroll through internet, Instagram, and I don't think people really, it might not feel the same. Like to me,
Yeah.
it felt really awesome to go to my favorite record store and see my band's name on the wall for a show. Granted, it was a shitty show, I'm sure, but like up there with like people that I grew up obsessed over. I was really into these bands, the bigger our peers, like to see the generation before us, to see them up there, myself up there with them was really impressive. Now I feel like that kind of nuance is not necessarily the same. And I think that maybe a younger band, and I could be wrong, I don't want to sound like an old asshole, but like I feel like you're when you're when I'm assuming if you're 15 and you're starting a band, your agenda doesn't start with like how do I get out and play a show? It's like how do we get on the internet and get followers or likes or seen? And I think that
Mm.
that is um a whole different playing field. It's completely different than what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's as much emphasis put on the live show more than or opposed to like what's put on the emphasis put on their social media, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think, you're a few years older than me, but not very much. And I think I squeak into being Generation X on the
Mm.
basis of the fact that I went through all of my youth and adolescence with no mobile phones and no internet. So it's kind of like those were my formative years. Um, so I've always got this kind of like a little bit of suspicion of social media and that side of things. But at the same time, I also recognize that you don't want to be a Luddite about it. It's like these things have got advantages, but
Mm.
there's no way to avoid the observation that it really has changed fundamentally. And I am constantly asking myself, like, what value is coming from the social media and what value is coming from that kind of interaction? Like, I'm sure there is value, but are we losing something? Or like, is there a point? Is there a cutoff point where we put too much emphasis on that and we lose something? I mean, I guess the human interaction and the actually seeing people face to face is something really fundamental that we don't want to lose.
Yeah, I mean, even the fact that we're talking right now and we can see each other says a lot because this would have been conducted through mail. Like you would have written out questions and I would have written out answers and then it would have been printed at Kinko's and then that would have been it. So I mean, I think there's pros and cons to everything. And I think what you're saying is a good question, but it's such a massive thing to try to wrap your head around and tackle.
Mm,
Is it good or bad or better or worse or whatever? Um, I think it's probably both of everything because you lose certain elements of like things being special, but then you have the ability, like, it's like I started a band with the most obvious people in my physical geographical location that would make sense. Where like, I don't know, if I was 15 now, I could probably start a band with someone in New York, at
yeah,
least recording wise and collaborate on something. That's fucking amazing.
yeah.
And do people do that? I guess yeah, they do, and that's cool. So, there's the pros and cons of both of those things, I believe.
Mm,
Also, I think maybe for people that are sort of marginalized, be it people of color or LGBTQ people, or whatever kind of, um, I mean, let's face it, punk isn't like a progressive as we would like to think it is, punk or hardcore or whatever, or
mm,
DIY, whatever you want to call it. So I think like maybe if you were feeling isolated as a queer kid in rural America, you could probably find someone that you could relate to on the internet much easier than you can by really trying to find out where the cool local DIY gig would be at.
yeah.
that's
No, no, it's a
that's
very good
like,
point. Yeah.
yeah, so and you could, maybe it helps people survive because I'm sure there was a lot of isolation. Fuck, I felt isolated, and I wasn't. I mean, I guess I wasn't marginalized like the people that that I just mentioned. So but I felt fucking totally isolated. And also like mental health is a big issue too because people that are into weird stuff tend to do it because of the things that they're struggling with. And
Yeah.
so a lot of my friends didn't make it. And I think there's like, so there's the pros and cons there, again, because there's the pros that you can like find other people that are like you or understanding. The cons are too, like you kind of, there's a lot of mean people that are just on the internet fucking with everybody, and
Yeah.
there's also a lot of anxiety that comes from it because you see this barrage of stuff that's just overwhelming.
Yeah, and I feel like as well, it's like kind of the anonymity or the sort of the ability to be anonymous. I feel like is a problem as well because it sort of gives people this weird empowerment where they're like, oh, I can just say whatever the fuck I want. It doesn't matter because
Yeah.
I'm not like having a real interaction with a person.
Yeah, because when I was growing up, if you were going to call me a fag, there was a consequence to that. Now, I mean, even last week I had some piece of shit on Instagram tell me that I'm a fag, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Like, I'm 48, man. Like, like you're gonna say that kind of shit to me in my face, they wouldn't fucking do it. And I'm not trying to act like macho or that I could fight someone, but like you gotta have guts if you're gonna say that to someone in
Yeah.
their face. And so I feel like the guts have been removed, and now you just have a bunch of dipshits saying stuff freely. Yeah, but that's also like, I mean, human culture is lacking a lot of elements of humanity, and I think maybe the internet has not helped strengthen it, the lacking of it.
Yeah, perhaps.
Or
Well,
I guess what we're lacking, it hasn't strengthened the things that we do need help with. So.
yeah, no, there's definitely truth in that. I want to talk to you a little bit about 31G. How did that come about, the label?
That's okay. So, before DIY was even a term, I think it's like it is like the essence of that mindset. So like I was playing in Struggle and started Swing Kids, right? And like by that time, okay, so I have like these two things that I dealt with. One was like putting stuff out on Ebullition, which I think was and is a great label. And it was very, I don't know how Kent did it, but like it was very it was run very well. And um it was very successful, not monetarily, but like I don't know how, like I don't want to say these things. I don't, maybe like as running a business, but without the idea of being like capitalism, like it ran
Like
a business.
it was self-sustaining.
self-sustaining, but like it was just very effective in how it ran. And so
Mm.
so I had this like sort of guideline to see. And so then with Struggle and Swing Kids doing stuff on other labels, run by people that were my age or a little bit older, it just kind of like got fucked up. Like again, no internet, like it's like you get your records in the mail from a record label and then they change the cover, they change the artwork, or the records skip, or or there's no accounting, like putting stuff out on a certain label that I dealt with where like the band paid for the recording and we heard that they pressed like 5,000 copies or something, and you're like, you do the math and you're like, I've never seen a royalty check, or like we got like $50. And I'm like, I don't know, this seems weird. And not that, I ever did it for money, but I just thought like this person's selling a shitload of records. I have no fucking idea what's going on. They changed the artwork, or someone made T-shirts with our band logo and their record label logo on it, and we didn't
Yeah.
okay that. Like it just seemed weird and like not the best way to do things.
Yeah, and even
Uh,
if you're not out to make money, you don't want to have people preying on you and making profit out of you in sort of, in sneaky ways.
Sure, and especially if the person's not a musician or not in a band, not playing the music, it just felt weird, and so I thought like, okay, I can do what they're doing, but better. And if I fuck up, I'm at fault, and I can blame myself instead of me blaming someone else who I think maybe didn't know what they were doing. Maybe they did, but regardless, I was like, I could do that myself. And
How
so
old were you at that time?
19.
Fuck.
So
Shit.
I was in Struggle. No, I was in Swing Kids, um and I was in college. And so the thing that was weird was I was getting financial aid to go to a community college, and the financial aid was because my dad, I only had one parent, and so I was able to get a little bit of money for financial aid, and I would go and steal all the books, and then there was like money that was like listed for like books and like housing and stuff like that, and I lived in this house that was like $60 a month for rent. So, my cost of living was very low. So my financial aid was like, I had a little bit of uh, wealth built. And so I was like, I'm going to put out a record. And Eric Allen, who was in Swing Kids and Struggle and Unbroken, said, you should put out this Unbroken single. We have these two songs, and you should also reissue the Swing Kids 7-inch, and you should start a record label. And I was like, all right. And so those were the two first releases. And I had a lot of friends that worked at Kinko's, the copy center, the copy place. And at the time at Kinko's, when you would go there to make photocopies, you had these copy keys. And so people like that knew what was up would steal their copy keys. So you would go in, you'd steal one. So you go into another Kinko's and you'd get the copy key and you'd make like 10 copies. You'd take it out. You'd put in yours that you stole and you'd make 4,000 copies, and then you'd go pay for the 10. And then, so there was that, in context with the people that I knew that worked at Kinko's that were like, all right, we're going to print your covers for free. So like,
Mm.
the Unbroken 7-inch, we were able to print all the covers for free. And it just, there was like ways to get around like the cost of manufacturing. And then I think a lot of people didn't really know how to sell a record. Like when I started the label, I didn't know like that I had to get a distribution company. There was no way to reach out to stores.
Mm.
So the fact that I could tour with these records it made it easier for me to get rid of them. Where
Yep.
like I feel like these other labels that I might have been criticizing at the time were just stuck at their house with 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 copies of a record, and
Yeah.
they didn't know how to get them out to people. You put an ad on Maximum Rock and Roll, or you put an ad in some random kid's zine, and you hope that someone orders it through the mail. But I would just be like, I'm gonna bring all this on tour, and I'm gonna fucking sell them at every stop possible and at the shows. And so we'd get rid of it. And so there was that, and then there was the fact that I would just try to put out stuff that I thought was cool, and was kind of maybe not. There was other bands that I thought were way cooler. I thought, labels like Gravity Records was like extremely cooler than 31G, and I wish that I was in one of those bands and was putting out those kind of bands. But little did I know that the things that I was doing and the people that I was associating with was also viewed as in similar ways that I looked at gravity. And
Mm.
so it just worked out in retrospect. And I just took a gamble. But at the time there was no other, it was total necessity and there was no other option. So I was like, I'm going to do this. And it worked for the most part. I mean, we're at 160 something releases now and it's pretty wild. But I've also like adjusted so much over the years and, I also don't pay myself. So
Hmm.
it's different. It's a lot different.
Did you have any kind of, logistical or anything else catastrophes along the way? Like I'm thinking of, shipments that disappeared, things that burnt down, people, distributors that never paid or whatever else.
Yep. The distributors that never paid was a big one because essentially you were taking a risk with people that maybe you didn't know too well. Someone saying like, "Oh, I want 50 copies of that Jenny Piccolo record," and then you send them 50, and the only way to get them is to write them a letter in the mail, or if you have a phone number and you have to use your dialer and you're fucking calling someone, and you don't ever reach them. You never like. There's been a lot of people that never ever paid me, which which was kind of weird because the model of starting or of putting out a record back then was the band would get 10% of the pressing for free. So like that's cool. And the band would essentially sell that on tour, or if they needed more, they could buy more at cost or whatever. But for me, if I'm not in the band or whatever it is, I have the other 90% that I have to go somehow sell. So my risk was like trying to sell it to these different people. So yeah, it got hard at times trying to facilitate these exchanges where like there's been so many people that have just fucking blew me off,
Mm.
and that sucks for me and maybe not the band necessarily, but it sucks for me because I was the one that was paying for it. But I mean, I experienced that on tour too, even before the internet or booking agents or anything that I was dealing with. I mean, we would show up and like no one booked a show and you're like, whoa, dude, I'm in Idaho and you were supposed to have a show and you didn't do it. That sucks. Sorry, dude. And like they would leave. So like I think it taught me being in bands that kind of like got in situations with record labels and then also touring and having people like kind of shit on us taught me how to not do that with people that I was dealing with. So like I mean, I've had issues with bands on 31G or people over the years, but nothing major. But like it's always been a misunderstanding or something, but
Mm.
it's never been like me ripping someone off or not being transparent. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I fucked up a bunch of times, but like I'm like, hey, I learned from it, or I didn't know that it was happening, or I'm trying to correct this, or whatever. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Do you feel in any way that you're more somehow insulated from these kinds of, being taken advantage of or things getting fucked up? Or is it just kind of, you have to be prepared for things to go pear-shaped?
Well, yeah, at this point, I mean, my distributor, Death Wish, which is the physical distributor, is great. They're not gonna fuck me over. I have 100% faith in them. I love the people that work there. Yeah, it's never gonna happen. I think the only like things that I run into were like someone will order something and say it's missing or damaged, and then it's like you have to give them their money back and you lose out on this order or whatever.
Mm.
I mean, but that's, it's not that. It's like what? Oh, I fucked up and I lost $100 or $200. It's better than like me being 19 years old and someone hosing me for 50 records, like that's a
Yep.
bigger deal. So it is what it is. Yeah, I mean, those sort of like weird issues don't come up very often. And when they do, it's just a little scratch. It's not like someone stabbed you and you're bleeding out money. So
Yeah. And so at this point in your life, would you say that everything that you're doing, that can be classed as work is somehow related to music or art?
completely, yeah.
And so when did that become the case? At what
Um,
point in your life?
when I was 40 and I was working at that gay club that I mentioned in my book about, right before my 40th birthday, there was a lot to it. I mean, maybe when the book comes out and if people listen to this, they'll seek out the book. But right before I turned 40, I remember going to work one night. I had this like whole series of other life issues. and I was very exhausted. My dog was very sick, and I was broke, and just felt very just felt depleted and kind of exhausted. And I remember going to work, and these younger people came in, newly 21. One of them, it was their birthday. They're 21 years old, and they fucking barfed all over the floor, barfed all over my shoe. And I was like, damn, man, I'm a fucking 40-year-old adult and I'm cleaning up this person's puke. And I'm like, the only person that's ever cleaned up my vomit was my mom. And I was a child. And I felt like, not that I'm better than that, but I just felt like I don't need to do this anymore. I don't need to clean up people's puke. And so I quit. And like my mindset was like, how am I going to function? How am I going to survive? And like a couple things happened, and it's got me 8 or 9 years. And I mean, yeah, people are like, oh, what's your real job? Like, where do you really make money? And that's like, well, I'm a publicist. Again, that's related to music.
Yeah.
So I work for this publicity company called The Chain, and it's like, yeah, it's music PR, and it's not always fun. It's kind of life sucking at time, depending on because some of the artists expect magical stuff to happen, and that's not how it's going to
Yeah.
work. But yeah, so I that, and then I hustle. I'll do like, I'm always like filling out these forms for research studies, like on weird shit. Like I'll do whatever, like whatever it is, just to hustle and get by. Um, I'm on EBT, like that's weird too. But yeah, whatever, just do whatever I can to survive. And I have no money, and I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna like die or starve or not have a roof over my head. I'll find a way to make it work. So I get by. I'll just say that.
Well, I think it is pretty inspirational as a true DIY believer, that you took that plunge, you made the jump, and you went, I'm going to give this a shot. And there's far from a guarantee of major financial reward. It's like there's a very high likelihood of extremely limited financial reward, but
Mhm.
you decided that was what was going to be fulfilling.
I don't know if I decided. I think it, like when I turned 40, I was like, um, I fucked up. I shouldn't have started a record label. Maybe not even played music, but I was like, I should have done something else because but at that time it's like, well, I've already done it. I've already put in 20 plus years. Like this is what I'm doing. This is the path that I'm on. I got to keep going. Um, because sometimes people will interview me and they'll be like, hey, what would you say to someone starting a record label now? I'll be like, my honest opinion is don't fucking start a record label. It's not a good idea. I mean, I think I'm lucky at this point because I got in there, in the game, or whatever you want to call it, at a certain point in time where like there's a cultural relevance to what 31G is, similar to Gravity Records. I hope similar to something like Dischord or
Mm.
Alternative Tentacles or Rough Trade or whatever. Like I don't know if I'm up there, but then like, or Sub Pop. There's all these fucking cool labels where it's like a thing. It's like bigger than just it's not a business. It's not this thing that churns out music. It's a cultural entity. I don't know.
It means something to people beyond just being somewhere where they can buy records from.
Of course. So that's something that I'm glad that I created. And that's not a business. That is something completely different. That's not
Mm.
something you go take a course and learn how to be successful in. And so those are interesting. And again, like all these records are here, and the bottom level is full of test pressings. That's my retirement. Like I'll just sell that shit on eBay, and that'll be like my retirement or whatever. Or if I die, that'll pay for my funeral cost or whatever it is. Like there's like this backup plan of like hoarding artifacts, I guess. But I
Yeah.
mean, I don't have like a retirement plan. I can't stop. I'm gonna just keep doing this, and maybe at some point something cool will happen. I don't know. I'm not I'm not hoping, I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm not betting on that, but we'll see. But yeah, a bit from the business side of things, it's been a gamble. So
Yeah. Now, sort of drawing things near to the end, one one sort of thing about this podcast. So even though I sort of started this podcast incidentally, and thank you for playing the part in organizing the Satya Sena interview as a publicist. But I figured out a few interviews in what this podcast is about. And I remembered that actually I made a promise to myself, which I actually made publicly, which was that I'm going to write a book, which is going to be about independent DIY music, basically taken from the accounts of people like yourself. And so like now the podcast sort of exists as basically like research ultimately for the book. And originally I had this idea that was going to be like a strand going through the book, which was my own personal ambition, was that I was going to go to Chicago and I was going to record with Steve Albini. And I
Huh.
thought of Steve Albini as basically being, you know, kind of like the Jesus of DIY.
Huh.
And obviously now he's gone.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm wondering, do you have, and have you had over the years, was there a person, that kind of like icon that you looked to that you sort of went like, this is kind of
Mm.
like the example to follow?
Yeah. Ian MacKaye for sure.
Ah,
Uh, which ironically, Fugazi recorded Red Medicine with Steve Albini, and they were like, "This fucking sucks," and then they re-recorded it somewhere else,
yeah.
which is crazy. I would love to hear that version so bad. But yeah, Ian was a very informative person in my life. I mean, I've met him a couple of times. He's very, very nice, and he's in his interviews and everything. He's so well spoken, and he's very poignant and like delivers the message very accurately. I think he's a very righteous human being.
Yeah.
Um, very similar to Albini. I mean, they were both creative in their own right to make something very specific, and very influential to the masses, and kind of stick to their guns. I think that I think that both of them, but I'll speak more so on Ian. I think that like it's very inspiring to hear that like I don't know what year this was. Obviously, the dollar sign doesn't necessarily equate to modern times, but like at one point after Fugazi stopped, Coachella was like, "We want you to play Coachella, and we'll give you $1 million," and that just seemed like a lot of money at the time they were offered it. And Ian said, "Oh, the next time Fugazi plays, it'll be for free in DC," and I was just like, "That's a fucking bold and such a killer statement." Uh, Lucky him that he could pass up $1 million, because I would do whatever the fuck it is to like to, if someone's like, give me $1 million to like do this thing, I'd be like, I'll do it. Yeah, it's fine. Um, uh, but it's very inspiring for sure to hear that and to like think
Mm.
about that mindset. He definitely was like a sort of North Star for my for my morals and ethical link to what I'm doing musically and business wise. Um, but I also feel like there was that thing where I think Nike used some kind of minor threat image in an ad, and it was illegally used. Like they didn't get, they didn't get there was no contracts or whatever. They didn't ask, I guess, to use it, and
Mm.
so he sued them only to like stop. But I would have been like, it's Nike, dude. Let's fucking just go for it. And I would take, I mean, I get it. Like he's just like, I just want him to stop. But I would have been, even if I didn't need the money, I would have been like, I'm gonna fucking take down Nike. It's a sweatshop company, like it's just very unethical company. Let's just fucking get a bunch of money from them and donate it. Give it to like what's the opposite of Nike? I guess like something that's like um American made, that's not made by, children in
Mm.
fucking Bangladesh or whatever. It would have been like you could have done something more. I would have been like, let's fucking go get them, dude. But so I think him and I are a little bit different. I would have just like at least kicked Nike in the balls if I could. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean,
pun intended, because they're like a sports company, but whatever. Uh,
indeed. Well, that'd be an interesting slogan. Kick whoever, kick X in the balls.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's totally legitimate, to be inspired by people, but also recognize that you wouldn't necessarily do the same things that they would do. And, so I do feel, I often feel with people that inspire me, I think, I don't know if I'm actually, when it comes to the crunch, as ethical as you, but you're a good example for me to kind of try to aspire to in
Yeah.
my own
Well,
way.
Of course. I mean, it also is really funny or interesting. At one point before Live Nation was called Clear Channel, and that was like an issue for the Locust when we were playing, because Live Nation at the time, or sorry, Clear Channel at the time was very anti-war. It was the Gulf War, whichever one you want to pick, the one during the GWB, the George W. Bush administration, and
Mm.
basically they were Clear Channel venues were like ejecting bigger artists. I think like Liza Minnelli and like Dixie Chicks and like I don't know who else. They were like kicking artists out of their venues for speaking out against the war. And
Mm.
then also they were the marketing campaign for the Bush administration's at least there's the second term. I don't know if it was the first. Anyhow, it had a lot of ties with it. So we were like, we're not going to play Clear Channel shows. And I remember going out on tour. The Locust would go on tour with Phantomas, and Yeah Yeah Yeahs. Both of them were like their agents, not the bands, but their agents were like, "Whoa, dude! Like we can't book a tour without using Clear Channel. Like this is fucked up." And luckily, Phantomas and Yeah Yeah Yeahs were like, "No, no, no. We want the Locust to go with us. Make this work." And so for the most part, it worked. There was a couple shows where like they were just like, "You're not gonna be able to play in the city. You're gonna have to skip the show or play another show somewhere else at another venue," because they were monopolizing all these venues. But both like of those bands, mainly Mike Patton and like not so much the Yeah Yeahs, but like they were just kind of like, wow, this is crazy. You're gonna just not play the show and not get paid. And like, yeah, we're gonna just not be very financially reasonable. We're gonna stick to our morals because we do not support war. We do not support the administration at the time, and that was a big thing. And it wasn't like like they weren't. It wasn't like Phantom House and Yash like you guys are fucking dumb. They're like, holy shit, I wish I was as um, righteous or whatever as you were, like, because we want to get
Mm.
paid, these other bands wanted to get paid. They're like, yeah, that's cool. We'd like to get paid too, but we're not going to do it. We're not going to compromise. So like it was sort of similar like that, I suppose, where
Yeah.
like if I could have sued Nike, I would have. But whatever. So it's just I think you pick your fight and you
Yeah,
you pick
exactly. Everyone picks their battles.
course. And I think that like maybe bands like Yayas or Phantomas, I fucking love them and I have no criticism and with anybody in those bands whatsoever, and not even their agents. I back their agents for even fucking entertaining the idea that we wanted to do something that was virtually goes against their business practices, and the fact that they did it for the sake of art or for their artist that they booked or whatever it is, like it's cool. I have no criticisms for those anyone involved in those scenarios. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a weird thing because I still kind of look at like Live Nation as a very similar entity that I mean it is Clear Channel. It's just shifted differently. It's different.
Mm.
Going back to
Oh,
the DIY thing, it's like you could play a Live Nation venue and get a guarantee, or if you can just do DIY shows, that's cool. But like I also can't go and play in Rochester, New York for $150 and sleep on someone's floor. It's just I'm not equipped to do that anymore in my
yeah.
life. So yeah.
Well, this is great, Justin. You now see you're activating parts of my brain. You give me insights I didn't have before. And now I'm like, ooh, here are things that I need to bring up with people that I interview in the future. This is great. This is the kind of momentum that I love.
Thanks. Yeah.
So, yeah, you got so many things going on, but this is the moment where I'm going to say to you, plug whatever you would like to plug. What's coming up? Where should people, follow to keep track of what you're doing?
Well, I don't know when this podcast will come out, but there is a documentary that was made about me and 31G called "Don't Fall in Love with Yourself," which in itself is very odd for me to even have exist. And also in retrospect, I think it should have been about Gabe Serbian, but it's not. He's great in it though. But the documentary was online and now it's offline because it's getting a proper streaming distribution service. So it will be on I'm assuming like Tubi and maybe Netflix and stuff in the end of August. But in that film, it really explains like me and all of the things that we've been kind of talking about, you know. I think that would be the thing to plug. You can buy the Blu-ray and you can buy the VHS now physically. You can buy those things. They're available from Enjoy the Ride Records and also 31G Records. Yeah, I guess I would plug that because that kind of ties into like all of this shit that I do in some way.
No, that's really, really cool. No, I will definitely post this episode before that. I was thinking probably the beginning of August. So
Okay.
there will
The
be time.
trailer is online. It's on YouTube, and you can kind of get the gist of it. But I think it's a good film. Even it's about me. I feel weird saying that, but I think like it explains something. Like the director John Nix did a really good job, and it explains something that I think. Well, I've been to like a couple film festivals where normal people would watch it, and they'd be like, "Whoa, this is fucking bizarre," but I get it. And then I think that's where you like know like, oh yeah, they did a good job because regular people can understand it. So yeah, that would be the thing I would plug for sure.
No, that sounds really cool. And again, going back to the thing of the age, I always feel like a bit weird, like saying about social media, but if people are going to follow you, is Instagram the place?
Yep. Instagram works, yeah, that or Facebook. I haven't ventured into TikTok. I'm probably gonna avoid it forever. There's
Yeah, I
Twitter,
have a
which is
similar
also
feeling.
known as X, but that's like for older buttholes, I think. But yeah, Instagram and Facebook are fine, you know. Or
Yeah.
telepathy. That's cool. I like telepathy.
Telepathy is very cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
Stare at
I
the
think
light
it would
bulb for
be.
long enough and make it go out.
Yeah, yeah.
Justin, it was great to talk to you. As I say, I'm really happy that we finally got to talk in real time. It was very cool.
Yeah,
So
thank you so
yeah,
much. It's really,
thanks a
really
lot for your
cool to,
time.
yeah, thank you so much. It was cool to tackle all these things and to dive into it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great. I'm glad we managed to get through so much. So yeah.
Yeah, cool.